Freed by royal pardon in Malaysia and free to make his political comeback. After years in prison, Anwar Ibrahim is tipped to become the next Prime Minister to replace his once bitter foe, Mahathir Mohamad. So why are they cooperating now, and what does it all mean for Malaysia? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Hashem Ahelbarra. He's describing it as a new dawn for Malaysia. Anwar Ibrahim has walked free from prison thanks to royal pardon and the help of the man who sacked and jailed him 20 years ago. Mahathir Mohamad was re-elected last week as the world's oldest prime minister, and the 92-year-old is choosing Anwar, his former deputy before they became political enemies, as his replacement in the next couple of years. The royal pardon allows him to return to politics after serving 3 of a 5-year prison sentence for sodomy and corruption. Charges, he says, were politically motivated. We will talk to our guests in a moment, but first, Florence Lowe has more from Kuala Lumpur on the political intrigue.
Malaysia's most famous prisoner is free. Anwar Ibrahim, once the country's deputy prime minister and former opposition leader, has been granted a royal pardon. He left the hospital where he had been seeking treatment for a shoulder injury with his wife and supporters. Anwar had been serving time for a second sodomy conviction upheld in 2015.
We appealed because there was a miscarriage of justice. We appealed because there was travesty of justice. We appealed because there was clear conspiracy to condemn me, assassinate my political character. And I praise to Allah because the king accepted this, that the pardon is complete, unconditional.
A royal pardon means a 5-year ban on political activity will not apply to Anwar. He will have to contest in and win a by-election if he is to become a member of parliament. Anwar has said he'd like to take some time off to spend with his family before he returns to active politics. His lawyer says that could take place within the next couple of weeks. Anwar has pledged his full support for the government, now led by one-time foe turned ally Mahathir Mohamad.
He has proven his mentor. He has made sacrifices. He was maligned in the media. I tell you, it is like deja vu. But he struggled, worked indefatigably hard. Together, he has now supported the reform agenda. He has facilitated even my release. Why should I harbor any malice towards him?
The two had struck up an unlikely alliance to defeat their former colleagues in Barisan Nasional, the coalition that had governed Malaysia since independence more than 60 years ago. Mahathir has promised to step aside and hand power to Anwar within 2 years. Florence Louis, Al Jazeera, Kuala Lumpur.
Malaysia is a multi-ethnic, multi-religious federation of 13 states and 3 federal territories with a multi-party political system. The majority Muslim ethnic Malay are dominant politically and ruled by a constitutional monarchy. The king's role is largely ceremonial and is rotated every 5 years among the sultans of the 9 Malay states. The king appoints a prime minister from among the leading party in the House of Representatives. The Barisan Nasional coalition and its major party, the United Malays National Organization, ruled Malaysia for nearly 6 decades until losing its parliamentary majority in last week's election upset. The Malaysian economy is one of the most open anywhere and has diversified from agriculture to manufacturing since gaining independence from Great Britain in 1957. Let's now go to our guests. Joining us in Kuala Lumpur, Chin-Huat Wong. He is political scientist at the Penang Institute in London. Clare Rewcastle Brown, founder of the Sarawak Report. That's an anti-corruption campaigning website. And also in Kuala Lumpur, Sophie Lemiere. She is a doctoral fellow at the Weatherhead Center for International Affairs at Harvard University and author of Illusions of Democracy, Malaysian Politics and People. Warm welcome to you all. Chin-Huat, I would like to ask you this question, which I think is now being asked by many people in Malaysia. How is it going to be possible for Mahathir Mohamad to manage the tricky relationship with a man who was his former protege, turned nemesis, and now new ally?
I think the circumstances make the power-sharing arrangement between two of them the naturally best outcome for both of them and for the country. Anwar Ibrahim had been a victim of authoritarianism in Malaysia, and Mahathir, as a nationalist, has learned bitterly that authoritarianism may render the country a neo-colony to foreign power because of corruption.
Mm-hmm. Clare, I mean, it seems that Anwar Ibrahim has some time to go before winning a seat at the parliament, then becoming prime minister. For the time being, it seems that Mahathir Mohamad has no option but to cooperate with Wan Aziz, the wife of Anwar Ibrahim. How is it going to work?
Yes, I don't think this is going to be as much of a problem as people are making out. There's a lot of talk about the tensions between the various aspects of this unlikely, it would seem, coalition. But I think that there's a unity of purpose here, and I think trust has been forged. It's been an existential struggle that has brought together many old enemies who were focused on what they saw as a terrible danger to Malaysia, a drift into authoritarianism, tyranny under the corrupt prime minister that they managed to get voted out at this election. I think that Mahathir and Anwar are united in an agreement on what needs to be done to bring the country back on the rails. And I think that Anwar will give Mahathir space. He's doing a pretty good job of it at the moment, I think, in the eyes of most Malaysians.
Sophie, I mean, how solid is this partnership between the two, Anwar Ibrahim and Mahathir Mohamad? And is it possible to say that Mahathir could turn back on the promise he made in the past about handing over power to Anwar Ibrahim?
I believe Mahathir is a pragmatic. He has clearly expressed his will to reform the country and the fact that he needed about 18 to 24 months to do that. I think there is not really an issue of a time frame here, and I think Clare has explained that really well as well. Both men agree that there will be a transition to power from one to the other, and both men have agreed that this alliance almost against nature is built on a strong agenda for reform. So I think there will be no real worry to have over the will of Mahathir to respect this agreement.
Good. So now, since we have the two agreeing to work together, let's have a look at the challenges that are going to face in the near future. Chin-Huat, top priority for the time being, building the case against Najib Razak. Is this something which is going to work, and where is it going to lead to?
I think what Mahathir has stressed so many times is that they would let rule of law prevail. On this case, as we can see, he has removed a lot of Najib's loyalists from the government, from key public institutions, for those cases to be able to dealt with by law. And what is more important is we have seen now that he has appointed a committee of 5 persons in legal background to initiate institutional reform. I think what is more important is to go beyond the symptoms, but rather going to the root cause itself to deal with corruptions that is embedded and entrenched in the system because of authoritarianism.
Clare, you've been very instrumental in 2015 with your news website, Sarawak, reporting, exposing the scandal of the 1MDB, which is the investment fund. Is this something which is just about Najib Razak, or do you think it's about a rampant corruption in the system itself?
Yes, it was an expression of a system that where corruption had taken hold. But Najib was in a class of his own. He embraced that corruption, I think. Much talk there's been of corruption under his predecessors, such as Mahathir. But Najib seemed to almost approve of it as a system, and of course had a flamboyant and extravagant family who had been caught, wasting, stealing hundreds of millions, billions of public funds. Now, Najib fired his own Attorney General back in 2015 when he was about to be brought to book by charges. So shocked, indeed, was the establishment in Malaysia. It's significant that Mahathir has invited that former AG, Attorney General, to see him in the last couple of days. And of course, the contents of those charges will have been reviewed. And I don't think Najib will be sitting very long without having faced formal charges to bring him to book.
Sophie, I mean, at the surface, you have the family of Najib Razak, which is embezzling hundreds of millions of dollars from the investment fund. But then the man was stifling discontent, stifling opponents, including senior officials who were trying to come forth and talk about the corruption cases. Doesn't this lead us to the genuine talk about a reform of the political system in Malaysia on its own that does not allow for open expression?
Well, actually, there is a need for political reform in Malaysia, and Mahathir is, I think, committed to that, and we've been talking about it at length. I think the question now is about the reform of the political culture, and that takes a lot of time. We have today an alliance that is composed of people who were for the longest time in the opposition, but as well people who were in the government with UMNO before, and who are used to this UMNO system that we described earlier. So, of course, those people switched party and switched to the opposition because I believe they did not want to support this system anymore. But it does take time, and I think that, reform is one thing, legal reform or another, institutional reform. But then when it comes to reforming, again, political culture, it will take much more time.
Well, if the two are going to be, Anwar Ibrahim and Mahathir Mohamad, on the same page about the fight against corruption, Mr. Wong, what about scrapping the 6% tax on goods and services, which has been very important to generate cash for the economy? Do you think that both Anwar Ibrahim and Mahathir Mohamad will go ahead with that promise?
I think that this is almost a national consensus. It's not that the tax itself is inherently bad, but rather that Malaysians have not seen the benefit of the tax because the government has been corrupt and you have a lot of weightage and so on. I think Mahathir has just announced that the value-added tax rate would be reduced to 0% by 1st of June. And it's important for Malaysians to see improvement in their life in public services before, I think, the rates for this GST to be raised back again. And that probably would have to take a few years. What is hurting most Malaysians is cost of living going up. And there's no doubt that that's the reason why most people voted for change.
But Clare, isn't this something that could backfire in the sense that it looks like more of a populist agenda here? How can you scrap something that generates cash for the budget when we know that there are many restrictions to the Malaysian economy?
Well, I guess it's a bit like filling a bath from one end when you've got the plug running at the other. Money was pouring out of the Malaysian economy into this corrupt system of graft and patronage that Najib was allowing to race out of control. Billions were being stolen from the economy by his own family, by his hangers-on, by all the people that he was buying off. And you know, it was always, you know, all the financial institutions were saying, you know, Malaysia's got to get used to this sales tax because it brings in a solid income. But Mahathir has responded by saying, actually, I'm going to put the plug in the bath first. He's already announced the sacking of a number of political appointees, 17,000, I think, today. There's a lot of money to be regained just from pursuing the various superlatively corrupt individuals, starting with Najib himself. You know, there are billions of dollars sitting waiting to be returned in the United States and in Switzerland. The new finance minister, who was also in prison actually under Mahathir, has said he's taken a look at the finances that Najib left, and sadly, and not very surprisingly, he says he's been left speechless. There's going to be a very, very big reparation job needed on Malaysia's finances, but the country is now going to be properly run, and that brings hope, that brings confidence, investment and business. I think if anyone can pull this off, Mahathir, together with a very successful former finance minister, Anwar Ibrahim, I think they can bring it off.
Sophie, we're talking about Mahathir, who's been determined, adamant that he's going to reverse most of the decisions made by Najib Razak, particularly the one about the billions of dollars of Chinese investments in terms of infrastructure, ports and rail in Indonesia. Is it possible? Is he going to force the Chinese into making some concessions for him?
Well, Mahathir has expressed through the different speech that he has made since the night of election, actually, that Malaysia would be friendly to every country. He has really tried to express that he wanted to stabilize the market as well, to reassure investors. But he said as well that every government contract that were given to foreign countries will be revised and studied, and that decision will be taken. So there is a possibility here for the policies that were made and the decision made by Najib Razak towards China and Chinese investment will change. So when it comes to especially the region of the state of Johor and other places in Malaysia. And as said, you know, he has a very good team of people, highly qualified to revise those kind of decisions. So I think that, you know, there are a lot of big change to come in the next few weeks.
Chin-Huat, you know that the Chinese are very aggressive in pursuing their policy when it comes to infrastructure corridors in South and East Asia. Do you think that they will back down here to the Malaysians, not taking into consideration that any concession could be seen as paving the way for further concessions to other countries?
Well, I think that the also important thing is that we are very strategic. Malaysia is a country that China needs to win over, and given a person like Mahathir in power, there's no way you could actually force it down Malaysia's throat. I think that China is learning that they need to deal with Malaysia in a much more favorable way, that unless the deal is win-win, otherwise Malaysia would just be able to stop it. And Malaysia has options that always get friendlier to America and so on. And I think what China wants is something much more long-term. And if you have a strong government backed by a clear mandate, then I think China would find out what's the best deal to give you to get their way. Only if you have a weak government, then China would hope to exploit you to the maximum.
For the time being, I mean, we don't have any clear indication as to whether Mahathir Mohamad is going to break his promises when it comes to handing over power to Anwar Ibrahim. Clare, what's next for Anwar Ibrahim? Is he going to maintain the establishment that was created by Mahathir, or is he going to reinvent it?
I think they're going to work together, and I think they're going to make this happen. Mahathir is 92 years old. He's worried about his legacy. He's not going to cling on to power, I don't think. He's made that pledge. But to put my anti-corruption hat on for a second, and to go back to the China matter, one has to bear in mind that, and China is not the only country that will find itself under the heat in this way. But the various deals that China has been involved in are going to be exposed now as being highly questionable. Najib turned to China when he realised he was in big trouble over 1MDB, and the railroad project that you referred to was inflated, and I had the figures, I was leaked them, by over 100% in order to accommodate an attempt to refinance that money that had been stolen out of 1MDB. Now, you know, this is very embarrassing for China. It's not the only country, and there are several banks who are going to be very embarrassed by the revelations that fall out from 1MDB and Najib's other shocking scandals. So, you know, I think Malaysia will be able to, you know, to have its weight in the argument on these matters because there have been transgressions.
Sophie, when you look at the situation in Malaysia, Mahathir Mohamad punished Anwar Ibrahim, sacked him, sent him to jail. Then he groomed Najib Razak. Now he's turning against Najib Razak and building a new alliance of Anwar Ibrahim. Do you think that Anwar Ibrahim is in a position to say, you know what, the problem is with Mahathir, it's with the system, therefore I need to reform that system?
Well, it's interesting because indeed it looked like, you know, the Clare was saying that Mahathir is worried about his legacy, and as it is now, it looked like the legacy and the heir that Mahathir have chosen until now were a failure. I mean, Abdullah Brawi and then Najib Razak. So finally, he came back to his first choice, you know, who was Anwar Ibrahim, who actually never succeeded to him, and this time will finally succeed to him. So, of course, as we mentioned, the system, there is a problem, a systemic problem, and I think they're both working on it. And I think Mahathir, being a highly pragmatic, has recognized that by choosing to embrace the agenda of reformacy. Then I think they will not have any problem into working together, but what we have to keep in mind is that Anwar has clearly expressed his will to actually take some time off politics, at least a few months. He has expressed his will to travel abroad. I met with him on Monday, and he said that he would like to take fellowship in the US at some universities for a while. So he will be out of politics, at least he will be physically out of Malaysia. But we have to keep in mind that the Deputy Prime Minister, Wan Azizah Ismail, is his wife. So I believe that there will be a kind of a, if I may say, a political ménage à trois between Mahathir, Wan Azizah Ismail, and Anwar Ibrahim. And Anwar Ibrahim will definitely keep a step or foot in this government, in this cabinet, through his wife, Wan Azizah Ismail.
Chin-Huat, does the political saga end here, or because in the election, the political party that ruled Malaysia for 60 years was dealt a massive blow that could usher in a new political era in Malaysia, where new actors will step in?
Well, this is really a chance that Malaysia is on the crossroad whether we can really get out of it. And now, after the election, things look good. But the challenge here is really how to make sure that the population feel assured that you know, change will be better, because the old government in the past 60 years has been convincing the majority of the population, the ethnic Malays, that the change of government would mean that they will be worse off. And so I could foresee that the new opposition may use ethnicities and religions as an issue to derail it, but I believe that Mahathir would be able to bring it back. Mahathir envisioned a Malaysia that will be a developed country by the year 2020. I think he would work together with Anwar Ibrahim, with his coalition and the civil society and Malaysia at large to achieve that dream.
Chin-Huat, Wong, Clare, Rewcastle, Brown, Sophie, Lemiere, thank you very much indeed for your contribution to the program. I really appreciate it. And thank you too for watching. You can see the program again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. For further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Hashem, Ahelbarra, and the whole team here. Bye for now.